welcome to our April CAMEO Professional Learning Series event. Today, we're going to be talking about teaching entrepreneurship, and we're going to jump right in with our two special guests, Rachel Lynn Karry from World Artists United and Miguel Valenti with Otis College. But before that, I would like to acknowledge that I am speaking from the land within the territories of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. For a few moments, please bring your attention to the caretakers of our various lands, and I invite you to acknowledge the tribal lands where you reside in our chat. We'll hold our general announcements and much beloved mug raffle at the end of the hour. And Rachel and Miguel are eager to answer your questions. I know teaching entrepreneurship is a very specific thing that you're all wrestling with in your classes. So we've left time at the end of their time with us. So if you have questions you'd like to ask them, please enter them in the chat. So let's get started. Welcome, Miguel and Rachel. Can we begin by having you each just share a little bit about your career journeys and what led you to entrepreneurship? Rachel, can you start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is so amazing to be here. I love the organization and everything that you do, because I wish that I would have had something like this when I was growing up. It wasn't really until about 7 years ago that I realized that I could have a career in the arts and stepped into that. So my journey started off first as a social worker and working in everything from schools to mediation centers to all sorts of things. And I just realized that both to be able to support nonprofits and to, really be able to, I guess, make the impact in the world that I felt like I really wanted to make. Entrepreneurship was a way to do that. And, I really wanted to be able to teach, especially other women, how to step into that. So I've worked with all sorts of companies, from drones to lighting to skincare, and really just had to just jump in, head first and get a taste of it. At one point I was living in Miami and, finally had the checks in the box, the degrees and the success and all of that. And I sat back one day and I really realized, wow, I'm not doing what I'm so passionate about, which is music. And I grew up playing music, grew up in Motown in Metro Detroit. So we always had piano, saxophone, violin, whatever I could get my hands on, singing in the choir. My dad is in a band still today. So I've been my whole life around musicians and things like that. And I just realized I needed to get my hands on an instrument, and just have that, back in my life. And it was so important. And the universe kind of had a different idea, I guess. That I loved entrepreneurship and music. And I literally ran into my now business partner of the last 7 years, crossing paths at a valet. And I had invested into a couple media entertainment type companies, and he was building a equity crowdfunding platform to allow for equity crowdfunding for artists in entertainment. And it was really such an evolving process. I had no plan ever to be really where I am today and to do the things that I am, but it was just really somehow I had the mindset to just, follow my passion and follow the things that excited me. And I believed that it would all, be able to come together. So today I own a 360 creative agency, a record label, film company, marketing and branding agency. About 4 years ago, my partner and I started the Music Entrepreneur Conference. We started at Harvard University and have since moved it to New York, but really started that because as I started to work with artists and work in the music industry, there were a few things that I was, just really unhappy about. Number one, just the culture, me being a woman, I kept hearing about things that I was just going to have to put up with and personalities that I was going to have to put up with. And I thought, there's got to be a different way. There's great people in this industry, but I felt like we really needed to kind of create our own community where, like-minded people could thrive. And then just working with, young artists as well, I saw that there was a big disconnect there was a lot of talk around 2015, 16 when we started our business around entrepreneurship in music, but no one was really teaching, a lot of the personal development skills that you need to go along with the business. And so we really saw that there was a big need for that. And so stepped into it and started this conference. And it really just kind of has taken on a life of its own over the last 4 years. And so there's also a program which your students might be interested in, and they can apply for scholarships it's called Music Industry Essentials with NYU and Billboard. It's a self-directed course that we have. And so, yeah, I'm doing all sorts of things from film and documentaries to music and media tech and artists. So you can check out more on my LinkedIn, and won't fill you in with all the other boring details, but yeah, it's kind of been a wild ride to say the least.
Thanks, Rachel. It's great to have you here. Miguel, you want to share a little bit about your career journey, your very diverse career journey with us?
Well, that's Rachel's is a hard act to follow, but yeah, I grew up in one of these households where my mother was absolutely convinced there were only 3 professions worth taking up in the world, and that was doctor, lawyer, or an accountant. Well, not so good with numbers, don't like blood much, so I ended up going to law school, and I started out my professional career as about as far away from entrepreneurship as you can get, working for 2 of the biggest firms in the world, doing things with clients the size of small third world countries. There was nothing entrepreneurial about it. But when a 37-year-old senior associate on our deal dropped dead at his desk at age 37, I thought, you know what, apart from being bored by the work, this is not the way I want to go out. So I ended up sort of charting an arts career. I've been involved in theater, film, a lot of film, actually, film producing. I've done some writing. I've done some directing, directing in theater. And we got to a point, I wrote a book on ethics in entertainment, and it crossed the right person's desk in one of those, universe handing you something kind of things. And I ended up being hired to be a tenured professor at Arizona State University. And one day I get a call from the president saying, we don't do anything with film. And it seems like this was the year 2005. Seems like in 2005, a giant university like this that has one film course on the entire docket is probably not keeping up with the times. Anyway, so we formed the film school, but what I wanted to get to is once we had done that and our students were making projects and people were beginning to notice that the department actually existed, somebody came to me and said, look, we want to teach these students about entrepreneurship. And we know that what you do is entrepreneurial, and nobody else around here seems to know much about entrepreneurship. So can you help us start a program? So I began teaching there, and then through one thing or another, I ended up at Otis. They have just 18 months ago, instituted an entrepreneurship minor. And now there's a certificate program, and now we're looking to make it a major, but academia, everything takes years. But so now I am teaching artists in all different fields, from graphic design to fine art, to music, to film, to dance, the basic principles of entrepreneurship and how to sort of prepare themselves for careers in the world. So that's where I find myself today. And in fact, today we have our final presentations for all of my senior students, one of whom is going to walk away with a $15,000 prize, which I think is going to make their year a lot happier than it started out. So that's kind of my story in brief.
Thank you, Miguel. Awesome. All right, so today's pretty short, and as we all know, the world of entrepreneurship is giant. So I'm going to really quickly take us into the nitty-gritty of our amazing AME anchor standards. So we have two standards that talk specifically about entrepreneurship. One is 11.3, which says we want students to demonstrate entrepreneurship skills and knowledge of self-employment options and innovative ventures. And 11.4 says we want our students to employ entrepreneurial practices and behaviors appropriate to arts, media, and entertainment sector opportunities. So no offense to those people on the call who were part of writing those, but that feels super broad to me. And I have a really hard time knowing, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do in my classroom? So can we just spend like 2 minutes with each of you, maybe just giving your definition of what is entrepreneurship? Miguel, you want to start with that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, my first point in my notes here is that there really isn't a viable definition. If you ask 10 people what entrepreneurship is, they're going to give you 10 different answers, and sometimes radically different answers. What I can say, to use up the rest of my 2 minutes, what I can say is that I find that one of the biggest barriers to teaching students to be what we as teachers would call entrepreneurial, and to teach the theory and the skill set that goes with entrepreneurship, one of the difficulties is that everybody does interpret this word differently. So you run into things like artists saying, I don't want to be a business person and compromise my art. You run into people who say, oh, no, I'm going to go work for a big company. I don't need to know anything about entrepreneurship. Both of those statements are wrong. But the problem is, we have to figure out, at least in my experience, we have to figure out how to get our students on the same page with us definitionally. The word entrepreneurship has come to mean making money on your own by forming a business. Well, we all know that there's much, much, much more to it. But if you ask the average student, they're going to come up with a probably better worded answer than I just gave you as to what it is. That means only people who are interested in that are going to think it's worth studying. But entrepreneurial skills can fuel everything. And we need to get away from that silo. Sorry, I took too long there, but.
That was great. Rachel, you want to jump in with?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's just, especially in the arts, there's so many different ways and today to make money. And so, I mean, my definition would be, not having to clock in and out. But I agree with you that, even if you're going to work with a major corporation, there's entrepreneurship. We still want to teach people how to be innovative and curious and creative and help the business move forward. And then for, a variety of, an artist, right, that doesn't necessarily want to completely run their own business, we do want to empower them to understand the business and understand the economics, because if they don't, that's how so many artists, I mean, as far as music that I work with, mostly, end up really getting taken advantage of. So it was interesting. I was, just looking up, right, the Wikipedia definition that I could find online, the activity of setting up a business or businesses taking on financial risk in the hope of making a profit, right? And so those two things really stuck out with me, is the risk part. And, of course, there's the financial risk, but also for a lot of people, when you're starting out, it's just, investing your time. You have to just risk jumping in, getting your feet wet. Maybe you're trying to earn sweat equity, whatever. So that risk, and then that hope of earning a profit, you have to have blind faith that eventually you're going to get to that end road. But usually most plans don't go as planned. So you really have to just be prepared, and go into it having blind faith that with enough, time and learning and perseverance, eventually you can make it to that finish line.
And if I can just throw in one more sort of specific thing, we spend a lot of time teaching our students how to pitch what they're doing, right? To stand up and shiver in their boots and pitch whatever project they're working on. And every once in a while, you get a question, usually from somebody just starting out in this area of study, and they say, I'm never going to stand up in front of people and pitch a project. I'd rather shoot myself in the head. Somebody else is going to do it, or, I'm never going to form my own company. I'm never going to need to raise money that way. To which my response is, yeah, what about when you have to answer a question from your boss or your faculty? What about when you have to present yourself in the answer to a query made by somebody else? You're pitching. I don't care about the specifics, but you're pitching. You're justifying how you feel or the work you've done or the answer you've gotten. That is the skill. We're just adapting it a little bit differently when we talk about hardcore entrepreneurship. That's all.
Yeah, I tend to want to identify, what are those specific skills that can be taught in an AME class. Rachel, you were talking about this ability to take risks, right? To embrace risks. And I know in our discussions about this conversation, we also talked about the fear of failure, and these are kind of tangible things that we can address in our AME classes. I was hoping maybe you guys could talk a little bit about what are the skills that can actually be taught in a course to help students develop an entrepreneurial mindset as they move forward.
Who do you want to go first?
Miguel, why don't you go?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of very basic skills, and I think it's only limited by how much time you have the students in class. Recognizing opportunity in any situation. The one thing that I've found in all of the people who've tried to define entrepreneurship, the one thing I've found that I fully support with no reservation is entrepreneurship. Everybody thinks it's about the great idea, right? The light bulb moment, and now I'm going to make $1 million because I have this great idea. Entrepreneurship really isn't about that, and students need to realize that they can be entrepreneurs even if that light bulb never goes off. Entrepreneurship is about looking at somebody else's problem and helping them solve it. People don't buy great ideas, they buy solutions to personal problems that they have. So if you can help them solve a problem or make a situation better, you're an entrepreneur. So I think that teaching them to recognize opportunity, and there are lots of classroom exercises that are out there that you can do that with, teaching them how to pitch and think on their feet, teaching them how to not just talk to fellow students, but listen to them. Listening is a huge part of it. So we'll do things in class, like I will send people away in groups of 2 or 3, and I will literally have them interview each other and then come back and pitch the person they interviewed. And then I ask the person they interviewed, did they get it right? The idea is, oh, wait a minute, I didn't ask the right questions, or I didn't hear that answer, or it sharpens their skills to jump into a situation and figure out what the opportunities might be in that situation. There are lots of other practicals, but I'll let Rachel talk for a while. So,
yeah, I love all that. And when we were having, a conversation about this last week, certainly there are a lot of things that you teach, but you can teach. But I think there's also a lot about just kind of creating that environment and mindset, that philosophy by which people live, right? Because this is a constant evolving process. So we talked a lot about just like normalizing and celebrating failure, because throughout the journey, I mean, a successful entrepreneur is just one that can get up, more times than they fail, just that one last time. And so really being able to overcome that. And we were talking about, in a traditional like education setting, and I don't know for all of you, I know when I was growing up, there was just like such a fear. You didn't want to fail, right? You were graded on all the things that you got right, not the things that you got wrong, not the curiosity, that you have throughout the process. So I think just really having conversation and kind of like normalizing that process and giving people a perspective of what the entrepreneurial journey can look like. Another thing that one of, my mentors along the way, one of my first endeavors, in sales, was just all about getting 100 no's, right? So if you're going out there to pitch, you're trying to get clients, you're doing whatever, you're going to refine your pitch. It's not going to be perfect at the beginning. So, celebrate getting those no's, because then you're closer to a yes. And then I often, and still today have to live by the 80-20 rule, is that as I'm networking, building relationships, building a team, there's really going to be, 20% of those people that actually stick around. And so that can get, really frustrating. You put yourself in the shoes of a music artist, for instance, who's really trying to build a team around them, and then keep getting disappointed that people fall off before the money gets there. And, especially when you're in that sweat equity phase and trying to get things moving forward. So I think just having conversations around the journey and what to expect, so when they get out there to the real world, is not so hurtful when you get those no's and people look at you like, I saw a question in here too about how to help students that are dealing with parents and people around them who are telling them to get a real job, because there might not really be sustainability in the art, or in whatever particular career they're in. So really building also a group of motivational people around you, that you can kind of withstand some of that negativity, because it's gonna be
Yeah, if I could just pick up on that point. One more thing I wanted to mention as far as general skills that you can work on in the classroom. I always tell my students, no first draft is ever a final draft. They have to learn how to write. And they don't understand why a lot of the time. Somebody who's a painter in my class will say to me, I never need to write anything. Wrong. If you're going to go into any kind of business, very often the first thing people know about you is a piece of writing you send them, be it a letter, an email, some other communication like that. You have to be able to present yourself well in writing. And these days, I've watched my son go through it all through high school. Once the draft is done, the paper gets handed in. And, that's just not a good way to approach your education or your life. The other thing I wanted to piggyback off of is I just saw flash past me in the chat. It's moving pretty quickly on it because I'm trying to pay attention to both things. But there is this question of parents wondering why the hell their kids are going into the arts, pardon my French. Mine did it. I'm sure a lot of yours did it. This is just what parents do because they're worried about their kids having to stand out there with the tin cup on a street corner. The thing about that is, very often, if you can talk to the parents yourselves, and believe me, I'm not suggesting you do that, but if you can talk to them, you figure out pretty quickly that it's because they don't understand the job possibilities in the field their kid is talking about, and the student can't explain it because they don't have the world experience. So the example in the chat was a graphic designer. Well, graphic design skills can be used in a whole host of money-making endeavors and jobs. But the problem is it's probably not being explained that way. It's being, Mom, Dad, I want to be a graphic designer. I want to go to school for it. And this is what I want to do. And they say, what, are you kidding me? Don't you want to be a doctor or a lawyer? So part of it is that I think it's always a good idea in our classes to say, hey, look, this is a field you've expressed some interest in. Why don't we explore what kind of careers actually exist in that field? Where can you use those skills? I'm somebody who paid a fortune to go to law school, and I don't use my law degree on a day-to-day basis. The skills are still there, though. So if the students have the graphic design skills, they can work in a bunch of different jobs, but the parents don't know that. So I think that's always a good thing to have, like an hour of one of your first classes be about the career tracks in whatever you're teaching, so that they can take that information home, botch it all up, tell it to the parents wrong, and then you get the phone call from the parents and you can explain the realities,
There are some great comments in the chat and some good questions. So I'm going to just jump over there because I do want to give you all a chance to contribute. So let's start at the top here. So what are some key traits of a successful entrepreneur, would you say?
ability to fail and not lose heart and want to jump off buildings. Failure is an absolutely integral part of this. And I think there are very few really successful entrepreneurs who haven't failed once, twice, a dozen times in the past. That's where we learn. We don't really learn from success. We learn from, okay, how do I compensate for this? Or how do I change it to do this? Failure is critical.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Yeah, that's definitely one. I think, you know, just being curious, constantly learning, you know, and growing and putting yourself out there, is, you know, is definitely a key trait. And this is one thing that I always say too, especially like with artists that we work with, is knowing when to lead and when to follow, right? You really, you know, have this vision of where you want to take your career and what you want to do, but you know, as any entrepreneur, I mean, my goal is always to be the dumbest person in the room. I want to be with all smarter people than me so that I can just keep learning. So, you know, I really have to step back and also allow for people to, you know, give me advice and to really be able to, you know, to follow that. So I think the perseverance thing is probably the absolute, you know, biggest. And you know, to overcome that is really about your habits of mindset, how you feed yourself, you know, positivity, and again, the people that you're around as well to help you really keep your eye on the prize.
And I think
can you talk about those habits of mind a little bit more, Rachel? Because we talked about that in our conversations before this, and there's a lot to be said around that entrepreneurial mindset and the things that you can do to sort of keep you in that. And can you share a little more about that?
Yeah, well, I would say, I mean, first, like one really great thing is, and you can check it out online, the Miracle Morning. We were just having a talk with our team, and actually, so Rosario Dawson and her mom are partners in my company and really good friends, and she was the one who just shared this. She's gotten into this whole, you know, Miracle Morning routine of, you know, 10 minutes reading something. I have, you know, a strict policy where I read 10 pages of a good book, something that's going to, you know, fill me up with a skill, with something. Because if you can commit to those 10 pages a day, by the end of the year, you've read 10 or 12 books, you know, again, around personal development, leadership, business, whatever it is. You can't possibly be the same person at the end of the year after, you know, you've consumed that much. So, you know, I start my day off, my business partner and I, he watches comedy. So he's just like on TikTok or wherever he can, just, you know, getting himself in a positive mindset. And he always says one thing too, you know, like athletes, you have to have a short-term memory. You can't, you know, you got to forget about what happened yesterday. You got to forget about those no's. You got to forget about what mom and dad said. You got to move on and just start your day, you know, listening to, find Denzel Washington or someone on YouTube. I mean, there's a plethora of just motivational videos, right? John C. Maxwell and Les Brown. And these are a lot of people that I grew up on. And I'm sure there's, you know, younger mentors and folks out there that your students might be attracted to. There's a great book, The Super Attractors. So just having that morning routine, I think so many entrepreneurs talk about that, of, you know, how to keep themselves uplifted, journaling, doing gratitude journals, what they appreciate each day. Maybe those are some things that you implement already. And what else? I wrote a few different things down. Oh, vision boarding, creating dream lists, you know, SMART goals, things of that nature are, you know, really important to just keeping that mindset again of, you know, knowing where you want to get and just not giving up until you get there.
Great. That's a super list. Awesome. Anybody else want to just pop in and ask a question? You can write it in the chat, or you can just speak up if you'd like to. Maybe specifically about things you're doing in your classroom.
I'll say one other thing, super important, just staying, you know, organized, using some kind of planner system. You know, if you have goals that you're going to set, knowing how to reverse engineer and break those things down into daily habits. This is particular the Rockstar Life Planner. So for people in the music industry, for those who want to check this out, and it's really great because it's business and it's, you know, personal as well. Daily habits of just checking in with yourself, you know, emotionally, but then also understanding like key performance indicators to get where you want to go, because there's something called the compound effect, right? What you do today, tomorrow, all of that, it might be 2 years down the road where boom, now you're really getting into momentum. So you have to have, you know, a lot of patience and understand that the work that you're putting in now, although, you know, you're not seeing that immediate result, right? It's like dieting, right? It's like, well, I can eat a salad or a cheeseburger today. I'm not really going to see much difference, but it's that compounded effect along the way. So anyway, so these are really great tools that I really suggest. I found this one recently too. Hopefully you guys can read that, but from chaos to creativity, building a productivity system for artists and writers.
And if I can jump in to change it just a little bit, somebody made the very good point in the chat that marketing is something that all our students will have to learn how to do, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you look at it from through a certain lens, we who teach entrepreneurship are luckier than a number of other teachers in their disciplines because we can get our students using what we teach them immediately. You know, I was a history major, and yes, you could learn the facts, and then in the following course, maybe somebody would ask about those facts, and you would say, oh, I remember studying that. But what we do, they can do immediately. They can do on their way home from your class. They can do in your class. If you look at marketing for a second, one thing that we think that our students, let's say from 18 down to 5 or whatever, are very media savvy, but they have a few giant blind spots that will come back to haunt them later. For one thing, I always say to them, look, okay, you don't want to run your own company. You want to go and work for a giant design firm or a toy company or whatever it might be. Do you realize that they've got somebody in the HR office who's checking all your social media before they offer you the job? The drunken party, half-naked, you know, photographs, the sex, all that stuff. If a student wants to go out in the world and be successful, especially as an entrepreneur, but even under other circumstances, they've got to present themselves to the world in a certain way. And they ought to learn now, when it's still early enough to be forgiven by potential employers for whatever peccadillos they have up there. Now's a good time to say, look, you've got to examine the image you are presenting to the world. And that includes social media for sure, because that's what you're going to build your marketing base on. You know, so if that is polluted with junk that you then can't get rid of, it's going to form a bad impression of you. It's not that we shouldn't all be young and stupid. I was stupider than most and didn't remain young long enough, but you've got to start managing that stuff. You know, when I was growing up, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have 24-hour media. You could hide a lot of stuff. You can't do that now. It's all permanent. And they don't really realize that until you hit them with it, till you say, look, you're going to send in that job application and somebody's going to sit down and search every Instagram post you've ever made. That's just the reality of the world. And they can learn that now and begin to cultivate a more professional presence in the world. And then save the fun stuff for private sites with their friends, you know?
Yeah, if they're on social media, they already have a brand. So maybe that could be a good exercise. Go research one another's brands and let me know what you're thinking, you know, what does it say right now? Because you have that. You're already marketing yourself. You're already branding yourself. So, you know, now what do you do with that? And I will say on that social media tip too, you know, so many artists are always thinking that we work with, like they need the big numbers, right? It's about having millions of followers or whatever. And so much of our talk at our last conference was really going niche and finding those super fans, finding, you know, that one customer or that one fan that you can, you know, turn into a paying, you know, customer that might, you know, buy some merchandise or listen to your music or do whatever. And once you're able to collect their data, let's say they have, hopefully, you know, your students maybe have a website, or that's something that you can start to work with them on, and then have like a newsletter sign up or a fan sign up or something like that, where they can start directing people to their newsletter base. And that email base is core for artists as well. I mean, again, mainly in music, there's also something called Superphone, which is a system, a text-based system. So your open rate is more like 98% versus, you know, a 20-25% with the newsletter. But those are some things that I would, you know, start to really think about, is how to really, you know, start to narrow down. Just, can you get one, you know, can you get one person to take that interest in your brand, and how can you scale that? So really thinking niche instead of broad is really important in arts.
A question I had is, what are some personal traits that you had that you were able to build on being an entrepreneur? And then what were some things that you really had to work on that you did, that weren't part of you as a person, that you really had to work on in order to be successful?
Well, for me, I mean, I'm super determined. So if I set myself on a goal, there is just really, I mean, it would take a lot. You might have to bury me down before I stop. But the organization piece was just always something that I really struggled with, how to stay accountable to. Again, that's why for me, these types of systems and written too, because, you know, the process of writing is so much different than digital. So that was something that luckily I've been able to, you know, work with different executive like coaches and things along the way. But that organization piece and just keeping myself accountable to writing, you know, each day, my goals, what I wanted to achieve, how that was going to, you know, add up to reaching, you know, certain goals. Yeah, it was something I've still not mastered, but I'm doing my best.
For me, and then I have to run. For me, it was the fundamental inability to deal with numbers and math. I was fine with the rest of it. You know, the rest of it is fairly easy, but the math I really had to struggle with, and I had to do a number of practice budgets, and I took budgets from film people and others in business that I knew they'd already worked with these budgets, and I'd try to recreate them blindly without looking at the numbers to see how close I got and where I was off. And I basically had to teach myself how to do that, because that wasn't part of our high school curriculum and I was terrible at it. So.
And I think with that, a good exercise, you know, with the students could be, hey, when you graduate or right now, you want to make money, you know, how much do you need on a, you know, monthly or annual basis? And then think about the services and the things that you could provide, and what type of clients, maybe what type of, you know, packages that you could offer, and just kind of reverse engineering to how many, you know, clients that you have to get, and you know, hours of work or whatever that looks like to be able to get there, just so they can kind of see it visually, and then create that, you know, that checklist. Hey, first one, second one, starts with one, and then you get better at figuring out how to scale things from there.
I know we lost Miguel, but Rachel, do you mind doing one more question before we wrap here?
Yeah, sure.
I saw something about...
And I'm on LinkedIn as well. Please, everyone hit me up. You know, send me your questions. I'd be more than happy to chat, have a phone call, whatever, however I can be supportive.
Thank you. So Carolyn was asking about competition in the classroom. And certainly, you know, how you feel about that. She said, on the one hand, the world is a competitive place, but we're also about building healthy relationships between students. And you've been talking about, you know, this, you want students to take risks. So how do you walk that line?
Well, I'd love to hear a little more about maybe what she's thinking as far as competitiveness, but our whole thing is, actually our theme from our last conference has always been collaborate and rise. right? A lot of people are scared to maybe share their resources or whatever, because, again, it's hard enough sometimes to think that you can, make it in the industry. And so there's just this kind of like sense of not wanting to share. But the more that you can collaborate with people, that you can also, I say there's no better currency than appreciation. So I try to just help as many people get what they want to get. And then I know I'm always going to have allies to come back and support me. And that's really how I've, built a lot of my business. And I think, we're in a sharing economy, and that's really how it works. One hand washes the other. At some point you're going to need, a camera person, or you're going to need that graphic designer. Like, everyone's going to need everyone at some point. You're going to need music for your, for your video, and vice versa. So, does that answer your question, or is there maybe something more specific around the competitiveness?
I mean, if I can just like unmute and jump in. So like when we have students do like a design project, for example, and I'm working with like a client and the students are designing for that person, there becomes like, there has to be like a winner, someone who does better than the rest, or at least their design is chosen by the client. And so part of that is like the failure, like you guys talked about, but part of that is dealing with like celebrating the winner and recognizing that it's not always going to be you, but striving to be the person who wins also, and kind of trying to foster those relationships between students.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, hey, in the real world, that disappointment comes. Like, I don't always win, and sometimes that hurts when, when someone else does. I don't really have a particular example, for you of really what else to do, but I think just kind of normalizing that's what happens. Yeah.
This has been awesome, Rachel. Thank you so much for all of your concrete examples and things that our teachers can take back to the classroom and hopefully use next week. That's our goal, to really make these professional learning events as pragmatic as possible for all of you. So we're going to switch gears and do some announcements, but Rachel, you're welcome to stay, and you can pop into the community of practice rooms if you want to at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put a little list together of some of these different resources that I shared. There's one more thing that I just really want to share. Brian Grazer, do you guys know the producer Brian Grazer? If you've ever seen, he has a book, something about where did I wrote it down? The power of curiosity, something about curiosity.
The Curious Mind.
The Curious Mind. Yes, such a great book. So I would definitely share that, with the students. Again, he was a young guy wanting to get into the industry, and just, set a goal of doing like these curiosity interviews and just getting out there and meeting people. I always ask people, who do you know that I should know? And get meetings and just meet people and have conversations. And that, is one of the most important things. So yeah, I will stick around, and, again, hit me up. Happy to connect.
Thank you, Rachel. We could do a whole nother one of these just on networking, because I think that is huge for our students and just practicing.
Yeah.
So it's great to have you here, Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I'm going to hand it over to Jack, who has some announcements for all of us.
Hey, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. I unmuted. I am unmuted, right, Allison?
Yes, you're unmuted, and I'm back if you need me. I don't know if it's my turn yet, but.
Okay. So my first duty is to announce this month's mug winners, which is always one of the highlights of our meeting. And so they were the 4th, 5th, and 6th people to sign on, and they are Carolyn Jungman, Cherie Glisson, and Sudi Mamarzadeh. You're the winners of the mugs, and so we will get your information to Ashley, and Ashley will go to the post office and shoot your mug out to you, and you'll be receiving an AME mug fairly soon. Thanks so much for jumping on today. The other thing that I wanted to do is be sure that everyone was aware of some of the opportunities that that Otis College of Art and Design is making available to us. They have jumped in with both feet to the arts, media, and entertainment programs in California and worked with Ashley and Allison. And they have a number of things that I think would be valuable for your students. And I'm going to share my screen here if I can. Let me see. And just be sure that you're all aware of these things. And they used to work almost exclusively in the Los Angeles area, but one of the things that that Inez Bush, whose name is at the bottom of all of these documents that I'm going to share with you and her contact information, is that since the pandemic, they have really realized that they can offer their programs to a much larger audience. And so they are very excited about partnering with your schools in a lot of ways, and they have some ideas, some capstone courses that they are willing to offer, CTE workshops, things like that they can offer. And so there are a lot of ways that they are willing to work with your programs. Another thing that they have going is that they are offering their extension certificate classes to AME teachers for free. They will waive the tuition for you. And so let me see if I can locate that. Yeah, so now I need to go back. And so these are programs that they have that they offer to the industry at large, but they are offering to all AME teachers in California for free. And so you definitely going to want to go on the Otis College of Art and Design Extension website and take a look at some of the opportunities that they have for teachers. So that was sort of the main thing I wanted to share, was that they are offering these things to us for free, to you for free. And if it's something that you are interested in, they're a very highly respected school, not only in California, but around the world. And so you can really increase both your skills and some of the professional learning that you need to do. And with that, I will pass it to Allison.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if you heard that giant bird that just flew through my backyard. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I'm coming on to introduce some of my favorite people, the Music Forward Foundation. And I wanted to start by saying thank you specifically to Miss Laura Clark for helping pull together such incredible speakers for us as an organization. Music Forward has been one of our core partners for the state for the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, or maybe 2 years, in terms of providing work-based learning opportunities for our programs for free. And with COVID and some of, again, as you always hear me talk about those silver linings with COVID, those programs have been accessible to schools across the state, regardless of location. So previously, whereas they were only available to Los Angeles, now schools in rural counties can access some of the incredible Music Forward programming. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that they have crossed all pathways in terms of their programming. So Music Forward is teaching pitch and branding, marketing, skills that cross all across the entertainment industry. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody on this call is aware of this incredibly free work-based learning opportunity. And we're going to show a little video to kind of share some of the highlights of their programs. And so I think with that, unless Laura wants to chime in and say anything, because I know she's here with us today, I was going to turn it over to Ashley. Laura, do you want to say anything or say hi?
Hi, I'm good. I just appreciate being here, and I think Allison does a great job of talking about the work that we do, but do want to stress that have artist pathway and career pathway. So we're really focusing on the breadth of opportunity within the industry. And so I think sometimes there's a little bit of a misconception. So I want to make sure that everyone understands. And as I'm listening, like social perceptiveness and understanding that it's a competitive industry. And so being okay with that and learning from those experiences of, oh, I didn't win. What did they do really well that I could look at? Or how can I improve what I put out there? Like all of that kind of thing is built into some of the work that we're doing because we want them to be ready for the industry, right? And the industry is aggressively competitive. So there's that.
Thanks, Laura. So Ashley, do you have the video that you can queue up? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And I just realized that the air conditioning was blasting in the background. Sorry about that.
Hello, hello. Oh,
Hello.
Everybody's path is different. I think that's the biggest thing for everybody trying to figure out where to go, how to get there. It's just identify what your specific path is and just know where you are in your journey.
What is a mistake you made that easily could have been avoided? What did you learn from that moment that you take with you every day?
That's a big question.
I think that we're naturally better when we do things that we're passionate about. And if music makes you happy, it's okay if you don't know what exactly you want to do in music. There's literally something for everyone.
Yay, music forward. You all probably don't know this, but a lot of our presenters for our professional learning come from Music Forward. Laura has provided so many of your favorite speakers today. She helped connect us with Rachel. So they really are just amazing supporters of AME. And, you know, I think this is a great idea too in our CAMEO meetings to profile some of these partners that are really doing great work that will help you in your classroom. So we're gonna carry this forward and pick a meeting to showcase and really share out what they're doing and how you can use them in your classroom. So thanks, Laura. And I'm about to jump into our last segment before the COP meetings. I want to talk about the Institute because it is upon us. It's happening in June. Registration is open. It's happening June 21, 22, and 23. And I'm going to share my screen with you really fast. You have two ways to register. You can register as an individual with a credit card, or you can register as a group. And if you are coming from a district or a school that wants to send a group of people, there's a short form that you fill out, you send your check, and we get you all registered. We've talked a little bit about what the Institute looks like this year. It does look a little different than it has in the past. We're breaking the Institute up basically into two parts. The first part is our first day and a half, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the page here. And these are extended learning opportunities. So we're putting you in small groups to have AME exclusive experiences with some of our amazing industry partners like LACMA and Pensado's Place and Nickelodeon. If you click on any of these, like I'm going to click on LACMA right here, and you'll see that LACMA is offering our teachers in the first 2 days of the Institute an externship in collections management and art preparation and installation. It's going to be incredible. and there are only 20 seats available for this experience. There are also only a few seats available in a lot of other experiences. So we want to urge you, our CAMEO members, who also, by the way, get a sweet little discount on registration. Regular registration is $185, but for you, it is only $145. But you do need to register in order to get your spot in some of these externships and workshops. I can't go through all of them right now. When you go into your COP, you guys will discuss what's appropriate for people in your COP. There's basically every community of practice has at least one that is targeted for your teachers. There's also some general sessions that are more appropriate maybe for administrators or counselors, or maybe you, if you want to do something a little more broad, like look at social and emotional learning. UCLA Arts and Healing is offering a workshop. Critical Media Project is offering a workshop. There's something for everyone, and they're all just incredible. So I will leave it to your COPs. You can talk about those. I'm going to join all the COPs today just for like 5 minutes to answer any questions about the Institute. But the second day and a half is just like what you are used to for our virtual institutes. We're going to have amazing speakers, great sessions. Some of you here are actually doing sessions for the Institute. We'll have an expo hall. We have some fantastic sponsors this year that are doing some special things. I'm excited to announce that Wix is a new AME sponsor this year, and they're planning some really fun things for the Institute. So I just want to say, get your registration in early, specifically if you want to take advantage of these externships, because they are really special. All right. So before we move on, I want to say a couple of thank yous, because we don't do the thank yous often enough. And there are a lot of people that are making all this happen. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Tom Walker. He's not here, but he's our graphic designer and our web person, and he just does an incredible job. He makes all of us look good. So shout out to Tom. He's not even here. Cece has been our communications intern, and she's really kicked our social media into gear. She's leaving us, but she's really incredible as well, and we're grateful to all of her work. We have awesome COP leads, so shout out to Danielle, Irene, Matthew, Janelle, Candace, and Johanna. All of you guys are doing incredible work. We're very grateful for you. And I want to say a welcome to Nicole Reed, who is coming on board as our new AME production coordinator for the Institute. And I am super grateful for her because she's making my job much easier, and I'm just happy to have her here. She's actually on the call now. She's helping with this meeting, so thank you, Nicole. And yeah, Jack, Allison, you know, we're all making it work here, and I think that's all I have to say other than have a great COP meeting, and I will pop in to answer any questions about the Institute.